Are you ready for market action? Well, here we are at InvestorBootCampOnline.com and Thornton Wealth Strategies taking a look at today's markets. August 22nd, 2014. Let's just start with the overview from the stock market averages. Here we have the NASDAQ up 0.32%. This is nice action. It just cleared a tight 3-day range. That's bullish. A 2.5-week string of gains continues. In the Canadian market, we are down marginally. Volume is lower. Let's start to look at some key stock action today. Green Mountain Coffee up nearly 15%. Heavy buying, and the stock had been relatively poor, not terrible, but you can see it was below the 50-day moving average and was a laggard. It wasn't keeping up with other stocks in the last 2.5 weeks, but it is back in business. Netflix, marginal gain, looking good since bottoming it out. Here it was 3 weeks ago under the 50-day, but it's been advancing. Let's take a look at some other ones in no particular order. Chipotle Mexican Grill, CMG. Let's refer to all of our stocks going forward by symbol. Slightly lower after a bearish reversal yesterday. So you can see yesterday it hit a new high. There it is, up all the way up to $700 a share. But it lost most of the gain, closing back in the range it came out of. Volume was heavy. Somebody with deep pockets wanted out of the stock and was taking advantage of it. The decline today is better than getting whacked, but the stock doesn't have any upside right now. The Hot Biotech, Puma Biotechnologies, PBYI, up today. It was slightly lower. It is down about 10% from the high earlier in the week. Staying with biotechs, let's just run through a few here. SCLN's been out of favor for quite a while, but it's been on fire the last couple of weeks. Let's jump over to Digital Ally, DGLY. This one's been in place since the unrest started in Ferguson, Missouri. Good gain today, but it continues to run into resistance near the high at around $9. Volume has been very heavy the last 3 days, while it wobbles around in this range between, let's call it about $5.60 and nearly $9 on the upside. This one's a wild one. Who knows what's going to happen here? In less boring stocks, IBM, Oracle, mounting a recovery here from the low of its base. Some other technology, NetSol Technologies, NTWK, remains in very poor condition. Immersion, very poor condition. In the Canadian market, OpenText burst to a new high. It's interlisted, OTEX. This stock had a huge breakout from down here. I think this is worth taking a little bit of a longer view. Our chart period there was 6 months. It's now 1 year. You can see that gain from a few weeks ago cleared a range that took us back to early February. While we have the 1 year chart up, let's jump away from the stock market for a minute. Energy continues to weaken. This is oil. Let's go back to our microscope here. Zero in with a 6-month chart. New low today, gap lower. Let's look at gasoline. This is a gasoline ETF. And the Nat Gas ETF here is, so this is the spot price. You can see here it got whacked just about 6 months ago and it remains very weak. But you're not seeing your natural gas prices come down from your supplier, and we're not seeing gasoline come down at the pumps either. What's with that? Now's our chance for somebody to say something about it. Or maybe don't fill up the gas tank this weekend. If you can help it. Try your rickshaw. What else can we look at? Back in the Canadian market, Constellation Software continues to set up near the top of a range that started in April, and Dollarama does the same. The stock Dollarama and Constellation Software, CSU, DOL, have both been amongst the best stocks in the Canadian market. On the higher yield side, Parkland Fuel continues to hold within its range. A and W, get yourself a Papa Burger. It's still looking good. Leisure World, another high yield security chain of lawn care facilities. It's looking better than most. In the REITs, XRE and the TSX, that's our REIT ETF. Gap lower today. That snaps the 3-week advance. That's not very good looking action. Let's look at one of our top ranked REITs in the Canadian market. Canadian Apartments remains in good shape. And let's just take a look at our preferred share ETF. Gap lower today. That doesn't look very good, but it's holding it as 50-day. Okay, well, that's enough of the boring stuff. I'll make a little bit more boring stuff here. There's actually something happening here. This is BCE, but on the Canadian bank side, that's a bearish reversal in the Royal Bank. And we're going to look at these on the Canadian side. These are all interlisted. There's another bearish reversal. Very low volume. That's interesting. Let's look at the volume in the U.S. on this one. Also reasonably low. We are late session right now, by the way, while we look at this. Other Canadian banks, BNS holding at its 50-day. BMO mid-range, reversal from a gain, but it's still a mid-range stock. We'll have to see how these Canadian banks trade. They've had a pretty good run since there. Let's go back to the Royal. You can see late March these stocks started to move, so they've advanced, in this case, from 63 to about 75. That's a gain of a little bit less. Let's call it 18% gain. That's about as good as it gets for Canadian banks, at least in the short run. Let's go look at the 1 year, just to get a better picture here. You can see that's a pretty good run. The Royal has not yet tested the 50-day moving average. Has come close several times, including a few weeks ago, but has not yet really even come down to it and tested it. The last time was here, but that was when it was still basing. So it wouldn't be a surprise for these stocks to start to come off here. Interprovincial pipe. I said we were done with the boring ones. We're not. This stock has not been boring. It's been strong. But boy, is it ever stretched from its long-term trend line. Well, we should visit this. The blue line is your 50-day moving average. Here's our chart settings down here. Simple moving averages. The 50-day moving average is our blue line. Here's our legend. The red line here, the nice smooth one, that's your long-term trend line, the 200-day. It is a long way from that trend line. It wouldn't be a surprise if that stock starts coming off. The theme in 2014 has been relatively boring stocks doing better than normal and doing better than a lot of other stocks. If we go back to the hot growth stocks from prior to the NASDAQ's early March peak, here's one example. Cyber surveillance firm FireEye had a really nice run from 40 to 95. Well, it has been wiped out, and it remains down and out and working on revisiting the low. Let's look at our social network stocks. Let's get that microscope again. Away with the telescope. Twitter has been trading extremely well since this big burst of buying here, almost 125 million shares. Today it clears that tight range. Look how tight those intraday ranges are in there. That's really bullish action, and today it's moving higher. Facebook hanging in there. LinkedIn, it's had a good run from the low of its base. Today it clears a tight range. That's a buy signal. Those social network stocks are suddenly coming to life after mixed action in there for the last year to year and a half and alternating good with the bad. Solar power, a sector that remains in relatively weak condition for the most part. it was hot prior to early March. That's First Solar. It's hanging around near the high of the base. Canadian Solar's been making a push from the low, but other ones still remain down and out. That's JASO, JKS, not looking so great. There is action in the 3D printer sector. Stratasys, which would be the largest pure play, is higher. Some buying pushes it up almost 4% from the 50-day, but it's still range bound. It is a fairly deep base, by the way. 3D Systems still near the low, and your very small 3D printer stock, an IPO from last year, it is still testing the low of a deep base. You can see after a bounce, it's fallen from over 48 to just over 26. That's pretty deep. What we can do now is let's go to some of our data lists here. Okay. Now you can see this list is the volume percent advances list, U.S. exchanges. We are on barchart.com in their stocks section. You can see it in the, you can't see it, the menu is over on the left here. I'm not going to show you that. Suffice it to say it is there. Let's just start with this. This is how I start the research every morning. This is the first list I look at after the stock market averages. Significant action. Here's Green Mountain Coffee down here up 17. Peregrine Semiconductor rips higher. That's a huge gain. That's a 50% gain. What else do we have? Salesforce.com is a little bit higher. We could look at that, but we're not going to. Intuit is down 2 to 83. The action in here, Ross Stores is a pretty good gain. That's not a growth play. There is not a whole lot of action going on here. Here's GameStop. We haven't seen GameStop in a while. Let's take a look at it. Well, the stock doesn't look that great. Let's look at it longer term. In fact, let's even look at it 2 years. We're on stockcharts.com here. Stock is still basing since November of 2013. This company just doesn't have the fundamentals anymore. Let's continue on with our data list from barchart.com. I just clicked in the advances, but I'm going to come back to this. Let's go to the declines first. One of the themes that we've been pounding the table on, it seems like it's an old story now, is the beating that a lot of stocks have been taking on a regular basis, even as the market averages have done well. Let's order this list. First of all, let's start with the highest price ones. See what's significant. Well, you don't see any big losses there. That's no surprise. The market's in much better condition now than it was even a few weeks ago. Let's just look at the worst losers. At the top here, a lower price biotech, a resource stock. It's mixed action today. There's Techmira. This has been in play since the Ebola virus struck in Western Africa. Down just 3.65% today. That's not too bad. Stocks had a big run. What else do we have here? Let's just scroll down and see what we have. You know, we have a pretty good looking day for not too many large percentage losers. So let's rejoice in that and move forward and look at the gainers. Let's focus on where the action is. Priceline.com, not much of a change. We talked about LinkedIn, Netflix. There's ICPT. We should come back to that one in a minute after reviewing this list. There's Peregrine with its massive gain. How about this one? Up 8%. Oh, that's TFM. Okay, CDZI. Okay, we're going to jump over here. I have to change the screen for you. So I said, so hope I remember the symbol. Whoa. Oh. Spooked myself. Well, this stock's on fire. Let's zero in here. It's been moving from about 8.5, in mid-July. Gains 15% today. There's huge volume, but it's under 700,000 shares. It's not much volume. Used to trade more than that. Well, we didn't finish looking at, let's go back. We did not finish looking at ICPT, which was not unlike PBYI with its massive gain on clinical trial results. You can see that it's been range bound, has burst higher about 2 weeks ago and has been trading pretty tight in here. That's pretty good action. Another one that's had big buying previously but remains range bound is ORMP, but it is not doing anything yet. So we are perusing the gainers list again, looking for something of significance. When you're familiar with at least a fair chunk of the stocks in the market, particularly when you know what the strong sectors are, you can see pretty quickly what the nature of the action is and what to look at. And then when you're finished doing that kind of a review, you can go and look at stocks you've never seen before, so you can add to your knowledge. Here's a biotech that does not look familiar. Biotechs have been mixed. Jazz Pharmaceuticals and Cubist marginal gains. SeaWorld up 7%. This stock has been hammered. GWPH, that stock's in play now, up marginally. Tree.com. Now here's one that's not been looked at for a while. Let's go back to stock charts for our chart study. Let's move our screen so we can actually see the chart. That would be useful. So let's climb the tree here. Oh yeah, it's on the move. And let's just take a longer view so we know what's going on. Well, it's like a lot of stocks. A lot of buying since almost exactly 1 year ago. That's the way to do it. Let's just do a last review of what the market averages are doing. The NASDAQ continues to lead in a relatively quiet day. Nothing wrong with that, as we have a pretty good advance going on again. It's all part of the story of the big bull market.